We're closing on 2024, and it's been a rough ride. But this year taught me a lot. This year I've had 3 jobs. I struggled with immigration. I almost burnt out, and I had nowhere to stay at some point. And I think we should all do that. We should all take some time to introspect at the end of the year. Take a look at what we failed, what we've accomplished, what we went through in order to create a vision for ourselves for the year to come. And so here's me doing this, and here are the 5 main lessons that I learned the hard way this year. So in January of this year, I came back to Canada after returning to Europe. To be honest, I thought that I wouldn't come back, but I did because at the time I had no apartment. I had a job that paid minimum wage, and I was trying to build my case to apply for permanent residency, but I was facing some problems with the procedure, and everything felt distant and impossible, as as if life here can only be rough, bumpy, and draining. And my mindset wasn't the greatest at the time. I was just trying to hang in there. I was in the middle of a storm, and I felt like I had no control over anything in my life. That being said, when I decided to come back to Canada, I also decided to bring order into my life and trying to do the best I could in order to be alive, to live a life that more fulfilled and less hectic in general. And so when it comes to the job situation, it's something that I've decided because I had graduated from university a few months prior, and I decided to work a full-time but minimum wage job because what happened is that right after uni, I started working at 9 to 5 as a social worker, and let's just say that it wasn't the life that I wanted for myself. Okay, it wasn't nothing compared to what I envisioned, and I had to do overtime. I had to go to court every other day. I had to destroy my brain in front of an old computer screen, and I said no. After 3 months, I quit that job. I said that no life is worth doing this, and this is when I started to do part-time coaching, and the rest of my hours I just spend them cleaning the gym and picking up after people paid minimum wage. Now, I've always been an anxious person, and I know it's easy for me to get stuck into anxiety loops when your mind races and your thoughts are kind of negative all the time. You think about all the same thoughts over and over again. And I remember this was winter in Canada, right? So early 2024. So you get up in the morning, you go to work, it's dark outside, and you come back home. It's 6 or 7, and it's still dark outside. So every day basically feels like the same day. It's repeating over and over again. You can't differentiate the days anymore. But I've realized that those patterns, those loops, and those storms aren't as bad as you think it is when you take an objective and an outside perspective on it. Those hard times will forge your mind if you go through them with a growth mindset. And at the time, that's something I lacked. Okay, it's something I needed. I needed to forge myself a growth mindset, accepting that change is possible, and that the adversity that's happening around me was something that would help me build my mindset instead of destroying something trying to destroy my life. And if you're willing to learn, if you're willing to understand and to observe hard times, the storms in your life will show you what you're made of, will show you the way out. And sometimes the way out isn't even out there in real life. Sometimes the way out is within, and you have to shift your mindset. And that's what happened for me. Because more often than not, the real storm is in your head. It's a construct rather than something physical or dangerous in real life. But emotionally, it's still, your brain is still operating like something's about to explode, like your life is chaotic and you need to fix everything at once because you're under loads of stress. The storm is there, whether it's in your mind or in real life, doesn't matter because you have to go through it anyway. So the only thing that really matters is your perception of it, your perception of what's happening and the way you react to it and how you choose to react to it. As long as you don't give up, it's an advice that I've heard from a lot of people, especially on the internet, like successful people. As long as you don't give up, as long as you keep going, you'll eventually make it. Doesn't matter the goal that you're seeking, because the goal is to not get your mind crushed by adversity and what's happening around you. And people don't always win. I've seen it in my life, by the way. I've met people who have been crushed by the storms in their lives, and even if they're still functional, waking up in the morning, going through their jobs. They gave up a long time ago. You can see it in their eyes and the way they interact with the world. They no longer believe that they can make it out. They're stuck in the same reality forever, even when the brighter days have replaced the storm and the clouds. There's nothing to fear anymore, but they're still acting like they have been so traumatized by the tempest that they think it's safer for them to behave like they're still in the storm. So that's what they do. Every day they wake up and if they're still cloud, like their vision is still gloomy and dark, and they still feel miserable because in their mind everything has changed and their life has been crushed by those outside events. But the reality is that the storm can last forever. And then will happen again for sure. But you have to deal with it the best you can with what you have at the moment. You should not fear it. Otherwise, it will dictate your life even when the storm is over. It's your responsibility to believe that when the time comes, you'll be able to get out of it. I've realized working in one of the fanciest clubs in my city, an immensely valuable lesson that I think most people will learn much later in life. I've learned that if you focus your life on the pursuit of external goals, like making money, finding success, building your wealth, you'll probably end up being miserable. And even though I did not have any money at the time, I was surrounded by people who had a lot of it. And I realized that it changed almost nothing to reality. Sure, they had Porsches, watches that cost the deposit of a house, and fancy clothes, right? But rich people still have to face the same human reality, like sickness, failed relationship, emotional distress. And I knew, that money doesn't buy happiness. Everybody keeps saying that. But you still imagine that life is much better with money and that you'll be able to do all those great things. You'll be free. You'd be able to live in this cool place. You'd be able to start working for yourself. You'd be able to put all these things into action. But I've come to find that all those things are not byproducts of money, but rather of the qualities that you have to develop in order to get the money. Money is just the tip of the iceberg. It doesn't solve anything, right? Money is just a tool. It's the currency that you use in order to trade things for this currency. And I think that if you're born with money, I think it's a disservice to it because you don't have to learn all the skills needed in order to understand the real value of money. And most people have done the work to get the money, but have not built the skills. They don't feel like they're worth the money, and they don't develop the cool lifestyle, and they don't end up being fulfilled and happy in life. More than that, I think it's really bad to sacrifice other areas of your life in order to get there, in order to get the money, to sacrifice family, friendships, physical health, because in my opinion, this is not worth it. And the last thing that I want is to wake up at 40 one day and be like, where have been the last 20 years of my life? Where are they gone? Because I learned that lesson through people, so vicariously, through the interactions that I had with those people that had money on a daily basis. And some of those people were millionaires, right? Who were going through divorce, no longer talking to their kids, in a pre-diabetic state. And the thing that I took away from those interactions is that I don't want to end up with just a whole bunch of money but nothing else in my life. I don't want to spend my life chasing the money just for the sake of having it, because I think this is the biggest trap, especially for young people. And this is what some of us are failing in modern societies. We're led to believe that your life only starts when you make decent amounts of money. But before that, you just need to hustle, just need to grind. I don't want my life to look like that. I want to make different decisions. I think I need to prioritize other aspects of my life and make decisions based on what I truly want. So intrinsic motivation, not on what other people think is meaningful. But the problem is that when you're only 23 years old, you don't have much idea about what you want from life. And instead of letting myself wander, I've decided to truly search for the things that I judge worthwhile in my life. And that's a really hard quest to be on. And one thing for sure that I understood is that physical health is, to me, way more important than money. It's the rule number one, because if you're not in shape, if you're not healthy, if your mind doesn't function properly, then what do you do with the money? Like, what do you care having money if your body, which is the thing that makes you a human being, a living being, is not in proper shape? Of course, you need some money. You need enough money to fulfill your basic needs. But beyond that, and a little extra for rainy days, because there's always shit that happens in life, working more becomes stressful. Hustling all the time kills your body, really. And you don't have enough time to rest. Therefore, your just physical health takes a hit. And when you're 20 and your physical health is already pretty messed up, then how is it going to look like? How do you plan on living the next 30 years of your life? Still hustling? Still doing the same things over and over again, even if you're killing your body? Doesn't make sense to me. But paradoxically, because you have to live at that time, that's when I got a second job to just pay for rent, basically. And I started working to have even more money to cover the necessities. But in my mind, that became the main goal. Take care of my physical health before anything else. Money is not the first thing on my list, as long as I can cover basic needs. So the second lesson was to not chase money. The third one is about happiness. Because happiness is not a byproduct of life. Happiness is not guaranteed. Most people around you are probably quite unhappy, in fact. Happiness, gratitude, contentment are choices, values that you need to cultivate. And the funny thing is that no one ever told me that I needed to find my own definition of happiness, and that working towards society's definition of happiness is really unlikely to bring me genuine happiness. Worse than that, you can lose your life chasing things that don't even matter to you in the end. You can spend your whole life working for a company you don't care about, watching shows that you don't really pay attention to, scrolling on Instagram, looking at people you've never met. And this past year told me that modern life is not designed for happiness, but for efficiency. And at first I really thought that this kind of way of thinking and conceptualizing the world was really depressive and pessimistic. But after reading enough books on the subject, I've come to realize that I think this is true. Like, this is true. It's not what I think around. Happiness is not guaranteed, and it's not even the primary goal of modern society. Paul Mazur said it in 1927. We must shift America from a needs to a desires culture. People must be trained to desire, to want new things, even before the old ones have been entirely consumed. For hundreds of years now, society has been shifting towards promoting, wanting, chasing, and buying. And if this led to a giant economic growth, which is a good thing, especially after the several wars that they've been facing and the several depressions that they've been facing, it's also led to never feeling like we have enough. And that's a problem. In North America, you're literally trained, when you're first born, you're trained to want more, buy more, desire more, even if this means training your time, health, well-being for the things that you want. And I realized that I want the opposite for my life. And I truly think that everyone wants the opposite for their lives. No one wants to spend their lives chasing material things that society tells you that you need, okay? I think this is important to understand. And even if you feel like this is not legit, at first I felt like it was a conspiracy theory or something like that, because society, this bad thing, like society is a monster, whatever. What I'm saying is it's not a judgment on whether it's good or bad that society pushes you to do these things, because at the time they needed a giant economic growth, so they need to push people into buying. I just think that we need to think more about what's happening and not to judge it as either good or bad, but do you want this or not for your life, and then change what you can. And this is motivated by comparison, social comparison. The reason I wanted to buy new and shiny stuff that I really didn't care about It's because other people around me had that thing, or because people on the internet told me that I needed this thing. But this is not genuine. I didn't really want a new jacket. I didn't really want a new smartwatch. I don't care about paying for a membership to learn exactly how to get rich and invest in crypto. And all those things come from a sense of lack. You look at the things that you don't have instead of focusing on what you do have. And that's how this society pushes you to buy more. Okay? But this wouldn't happen if you weren't bombarded with ads all day, if you weren't spending 4 or 6 or 8 hours on social media, and if you ask yourself, what do I really want? Okay? This is the advice I tell myself. Don't fall for this. I'm sure that half of the things that you have on your to buy list are things that you want to need because you want to show it off to people, not because those are things that you really need in your life. They're really necessary. And I think that if you want to work towards being happy, you need to shift your mindset of need when it comes to material possessions, not a mindset of desire. So you need to cover necessities. What you need, you buy. What you don't need, then you don't buy. Or else you make exceptions because you really want to enjoy this new thing or whatever. But it's an exception. It shouldn't be the primary way of functioning. Should it be to buy instantly every time that you want it? Otherwise, you just spend your whole life chasing the new iPhone when there's a new one out every year. We're always looking for hacks, for ways to compress time, for the fastest route to get somewhere, for the most efficient way to invest, for productivity tips. But this stresses your brain out like crazy and people don't realize it. Your brain doesn't really do shortcuts. You have to learn, and in order to learn, you have to put in the effort and you have to put in the time that's required. And I learned that you cannot cheat the system. It doesn't work. You can't lie to yourself and convince yourself that you'll be able to hack this thing, whatever it is. And in fact, looking for those shortcuts will just create more anxiety and amplify the feeling of not being enough because you're always, again, seeking for more, faster. And as someone that's really prone to a lot of anxiety, this year I've learned that I needed to stop trying to move as fast as possible because that only makes the anxiety worse. The faster you try to go, the less you can enjoy the view and appreciate the journey. And this is not worth it. The quicker you move, the more resources you burn. The quicker you wear out your body ultimately. And I think that this is why most people are really stressed out, overwhelmed, burnt out every day. It's because they're burning their bodies way too fast, largely due to the pace of the culture. American culture is fast life, fast food, fast fashion, fast everything. But if your way of living is fast, then your life will feel like a glimpse. And after having experienced that, I'm convinced that the way to live life is to try to slow down the process as much as possible. I think that this current lifestyle is not sustainable, and that it explains in part in modern societies the rise of anxiety, depression, happiness, loneliness, everything. And the worst is that the reason why we want to find a shortcut is to avoid the discomfort and the pain that are associated with the effort that's necessary to truly get the things that we want. And usually it's a character skill. But paradoxically, what I've come to find is that by hacking my way through, I just end up feeling even more overwhelmed and exhausted than if I had taken my time and slowed down the whole process. And that's an idea that has been hugely influenced by the book Slow Productivity by Cal Newport. Because now I believe that I should work on being consistent, patient, that things take time, way more time than the internet says it does, okay? And that trying to get everything as soon as possible isn't a sustainable way to live. And that's not how you achieve success in the end. Instead, I should have a clear path for myself and work on it every single day. And the time it takes me to achieve those things doesn't really matter as long as I produce quality output and I work at a natural pace. That's what I did in my life. I found a third job. I found a more stable job, and I quit the other 2 jobs to access more slowness, more peace of mind, and to really work on my skills instead of chasing opportunities and fast money. Now, the last lesson is about rest, because life works in equilibrium. All living organisms tend towards a state of balance, and it's called homeostasis. This is major. This is crucial. If it's cold outside, your body temperature will drop as a result. Okay, that's normal. And your body will respond by heating itself up to get back to an acceptable level. If you don't sleep for a whole night because you've been up studying, you have to sleep the major part of your day because your body will rebalance and push you towards sleep because you've been depriving it for a day. Basically saying if you go to an extreme, then your body will trigger the other extreme to get you back to the equilibrium, the point of balance. And I personally understood that concept on a micro scale. It's a concept that comes from biology. But this year I've learned that it works on a macro scale too. And it applies to absolutely every sphere of your life. Work too much and you'll be tired because your body will want you to return to a resting state to get back to an acceptable equilibrium point. You exercise and burn energy and your body will produce more energy to sustain the habit and to compensate for the energy that you've used in order to exercise. But the most important reaction is this one. If you lack motivation, energy, or willpower, you can force yourself to do something hard and your body will release dopamine as a reaction to rebalance the pain that you've experienced. When you understand that concept, when you understand that you can deliberately trigger the response you want through a certain pattern of behavior, then you unlock a human superpower. And now for me, I've realized that the equilibrium that I like is between work and rest. I tend to work a lot, but I fail to compensate with the opposite, which is really hard when no one told you that rest is a science in itself, and that there's a right way to do it. This is the first year where I prioritize the rest, that I allow my brain and body to slow down and recover more. Most people don't realize this, but you cannot sleep 5 or 6 hours every night for years and not face the consequences. You cannot work 40, 50, 60 hours per week and then chill out at 40 when you're starting to make your real money. In doing so, you'll take your mind and body to the extreme and it will try as much as possible to return back to homeostasis. But when you're too far gone, you start to pay for real consequences. You develop diseases, burnout, you age faster, your mental capacities, they diminish. Basically, there's no doubt that you'll just die faster because you're just wearing out your body way faster. You're not giving it the recovery that it needs. And I understood that I needed more relaxation. I needed more recovery. I needed more sleep. And it took me a while to accept this because I was seeing rest as a weakness instead of a human need. And as I said earlier, the problem is that this society has been designed for efficiency and it's operating at a very fast pace. Either you're in the race or you're not. And those who need rest are seen as weaker because they're not as efficient. But again, it doesn't work like that. And if you consider yourself a living being and not a robot, the sooner you realize this, the better, because you'll help your body return to a state of equilibrium that's ideal for the good life. So this is what I've learned in 2024. And those are the lessons I'll carry to 2025. And I think you should do the same. I think you should pick up a pen and paper and you should write down the most important lessons you've learned this year to help your future self do a better job. Now, for those that are interested, I have an email newsletter and you're going to find the link in the description. If you subscribe to the newsletter, you're going to have the articles and events, exclusive content, and promotions about the products that I have. So if you're interested in that, just click down below and then just subscribe. It's free. So anyway, I hope this helps and trust the process.